There were so many beautiful pastimes of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakura. But as promised, we're going to concentrate on number one, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakura on the Svarupa of the Jiva, and also to speak to the challenge by Sahajiyas and others like them, denouncing the authenticity of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakura's books and writings, and denying that he was strictly following Srila Jiva Gosvami, based, of course, on their not having true knowledge of Jiva Goswami or the proper understanding of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakura. In the book that we've been quoting from, Svarupa the Jiva, the publishers start from the closest, like Srila Gurudev quoting to Prabhupada and Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur and Srila Prabhupada's contemporaries, their quotes, excerpts from their lectures and books about the Svarupa, the Jiva. And now we're up to Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakura. So this is on page 35. This is quoting from Jaiva Dharma. Rajanath asks, please explain the eternal nature of the Jiva even more clearly. So Babaji says, the Jiva is atomic consciousness, and he's endowed with the quality of knowledge and is described by the word aham, I. He's the enjoyer, the thinker, and the one who comprehends. The Jiva has an eternal form, which is very subtle. Just as the different parts of the gross body, the hands, the legs, the nose, the eyes, and so on, combine to manifest a beautiful form when established in their respective places. Similarly, a very beautiful atomic spiritual body is manifest. So when he says atomic, he doesn't want us to think of atomic in terms of a material atom, which has a certain very minute size and shape. But this atomic is spiritual atomic. Just like we read that the super soul, the Paramatma feature of the Lord, is the size of a thumb in the heart. But he's not really the size of a material thumb. So although the Jiva is explained by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakura as atomic, in the spiritual world, he's the same size as Krishna and they play together, or she, as a maidservant of Srimati Radhika. So a very beautiful atomic spiritual body is manifest, which is composed of different spiritual parts. However, when the Jiva is entangled in Maya, the spiritual form is covered by two material bodies. One of these is called the subtle body, and the other is called the gross body. So when it says that the spiritual body is covered, Prabhupada gives the example of the sun. It can be said from our point of view, down here on earth, that the sun is covered by clouds. Right? We say that. The clouds are covering the sun. But actually, the clouds can never cover the sun. The sun is so big and so far away. But what's actually happening is that the clouds are covering our vision. So we understand from the chapter entitled Two Time Factors that there's an eternal time. And in that eternal time, the spiritual body is already there. And then it's just a matter of, in linear time, which is the, starting in time immemorial, the time of oblivion, and coming to, once we get sadhu sangha and guru, then the tendency to turn towards Krishna begins. So now we're gonna go through a few chapters here. The first one, I hope I have that, is called The Same Message, which is that Srila Prabhupada explains with reference to Shastra that from millions of years ago until today, there's absolutely no change between one acharya and another. If there's a change or a difference, then one of them is not acharya. It may be expressed in different words, like Srila Prabhupada may say, don't drink dirty water. And Srila Gurudev may say, drink clean water. Only two of the words are the same, drink and water. Everything else is different, but they're saying the same thing. Another cause of someone thinking the message is different is that if a previous acharya writes one verse and then a later acharya writes 3 pages, so many different words, but it's just an illumination of that verse. Also, the acharya might speak according to time, place, and circumstance of different audience. You don't tell a 3-year-old what you can tell a 20-year-old. So regarding the oneness in heart and Siddhanta of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakura, we're going to chapter 6, where Sri Prem Parojana Prabhu is asking Srila Bhaktivinoda Gosvami Maharaj. He says, Srila Jiva Goswami has discussed Jiva Tattva in the Sandarbhas, especially Paramatma Sandarbha. There, he has not described any Vaishishta or any speciality between one Jiva and another. Yet, we see in the writings of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakura that each living entity has an individual potential for a specific relationship with Krishna that will never change. It has no beginning and no end. It's just a matter of manifesting. Because if it was already manifested, then I would be in ecstasy. I wouldn't be a conditioned soul. So Srila Bhaktivinoda Goswami Maharaj says, they are not writing a different thing. They have expressed the same thing in a different way. From the point of view of category, the category being jiva, in tattva vichar, or the consideration of philosophical truth, jivas are all in one category. They all are eternal, they're not subject to matter, they're all infinitesimal, they're the same in category. But when you consider ras, Srila Maharaj said, then there's dasya, sakya, vatsalya, madhurya. Then, in the philosophy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, each rasa has 2 extra qualities than the previous one, and the intensity of the dasya, the thickness of the dasya, depends on the elevation of the ras. Like, for example, a mango bud is a mango, a tiny mango is a mango, a mature mango is a mango. It's the same mango, but one is more mature. So you have, let's say you have the servant at Mother Yasoda's house. He will take care of Krishna's clothing and wash them and fold them. And Mother Yasoda will also. But her doing it is also dasya. And Radharani is also dasya. Like she'll dress Krishna, and the gopis will dress Krishna. Everyone is dasya. Krishna is the only enjoyer, the object of service. Everyone else is the served. But the intensity, the mood, is quite different in the different rasas. Any questions so far? Anything not clear so far?
Sorry, what was that linked to? Why you were speaking about the
Dasya and Madhurya.
Yeah.
The link was to by category of jiva and jiva tattva, all jivas are the same. They have the same qualities.
Yeah.
But in terms of rasa vichar, or the consideration of relationship with Krishna, they all have a distinct relationship. All in dasya, but different intensities depending on what the rasa is.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. So then, the book quotes from Jiva Gosvami about the individuality of the soul. And Jiva Goswami is quoting Jamatra Muni here, who is supposed to be an incarnation of Ramanuja Acharya, who is an incarnation of Lakshman. Jiva Goswami says that the individual spirit soul is the marginal potency of the Lord is confirmed by these words, and Jamatra Muni is quoting from Padma Purana. So everything is so authorized and referring to scriptures. The individual spirit soul is the abode of knowledge. He has knowledge as one of his intrinsic qualities. He possesses consciousness. He is beyond the world of matter. He's never born, never changes, and possesses a single form which remains continually situated in his original spiritual nature. But that form again, the potential of that form and the particular relationship is there even in the ontological nature of the jiva, both in before he gets conditioned and when he's conditioned. But then that becomes matured, especially at the time of Bhava Bhakti, when Svarupa Shakti descends and he actually realizes his form. Otherwise, it's like Param Gurudev gives the example of the tree is in the seed, but if you dissect the seed, will you find the tree? No. But it's hidden there. So everything is there. It can be said that it's covered, it can be said that it's forgotten, but I was just hearing from Sundar Gopal Prabhu, who was speaking 4 hours on this very subject of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakura and Jiva Goswami, that, because I asked Gurudev, what does it mean when the scriptures say that Jiva has forgotten his relationship or that he remembers? Gurudev said there's no language is deficient and it's always going to have fault, but there's no other word. But factually, he didn't forget it because he never experienced it. Sundar Gopal gave a nice additional answer that the words forget and especially the word remembrance is used because it's so natural when we realize ourselves that it seems like I just remembered it, but it was always there. So then, another quote by Jiva Goswami. The soul is atomic, eternal, present by consciousness everywhere in the body, by nature conscious and blissful. He has a sense of individual identity, is unchanging, a witness within the body, and distinct from other jivas. So sometimes Srila Jiva Goswami his meanings are obtuse, I think the word is, like a sutra, a condensed phrase that's full of meaning, but it's hard to understand that meaning. Even in his own commentary of the Satsandarbhas, even that was very difficult. So Srila Gurudev explained that Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakura was the first person who made it in a line. Of course, Baladev Vijayabhusam Prabhu also made it more clear in his Govinda Bhasya, his commentary on Vedanta Sutra, quoting the same verses and explaining them in a way to open it up further. But then such clarity was given first by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakura, knowing the piteous state of us in this time period. And then his disciples, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Prabhupada, and his disciples all followed suit to make it clear. So another quote from Paramatma Sandarbha by Jiva Goswami. In his teachings for those on the path of Gyan, Lord Hamsadev indicates the idea of oneness among the jivas. He spoke in this way in reference to the jiva's common identity or consciousness, without distinguishing their individuality. There is indeed difference among the part and parcel jivas. But so why did he speak like this? He was speaking in accordance only with the ordinary view of the teachers of impersonal Gyan, and helpful to attain that. It's just like he was speaking for those who were less intelligent, just like Srila Jiva Goswami talked about the Swakiya Bhav, Swakiya Ras of Radha and Krishna, and the gopis being married, when actually that wasn't his idea at all, but to gradually bring in his less qualified disciples who would have thought that Radha and Krishna are immoral because Krishna stole the wives of other men. Therefore, he proved something that was unprovable, that they're married. But if we look into the actual verses that he quoted, it really shows that they weren't married. That's a whole other topic, which you can find. I believe it's in the book Discerning the True Sentiments of the Soul, in the end chapters. Very, very beautifully explained. So then, Srila Gurudev, a lot of these quotes about Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakura are from our Srila Gurudev, Srila Bhakti Vedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj. He says, the profound and confidential philosophical conclusions of the Brahma Samhita are practically incomprehensible without the help of the Digdarshani Tika of Jiva Goswami, whose esoteric and penetrating insights are, however, also extremely difficult to understand. Srila Satchidananda Bhaktivinoda Thakura, the eternal associate of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, is the Bhagirath. You all know Bhagirath, King Bhagirath. He's the one who brought the Ganges River to the earth when his predecessors, kings, couldn't. And Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakura caused the Ganges flow of bhakti to flow once again, inundating the entire world with prema in the modern age. He has conferred great welfare upon the Vaishnava world by translating the Digdarshani Tika into Bengali and writing a commentary of his own entitled Prakashani. So you'll be able to see that all in the commentary sections of Gurudev's Brahma Samhita. With the help of his purports, one can easily have access to the hidden moods of the original text and to Jiva Goswami's deep considerations. Now Gurudev gets a little more rustic about him. Sacchidananda Bhaktivinoda Thakura is the manifestation or Prakash Vigraha of Srila Gadadhar Pandit, who is none other than Radharani herself. Namo Bhaktivinodaya. Again and again I offer pranam to Sacchidananda Bhaktivinoda Thakura. The very advanced stage of bhakti is praying. And more than that, Sneha Man Pranaya Rag Anurag Bhav Mahabhav, one who is always pleasing Radha and Krishna by these topmost moods, is called Bhakti Vinod. Only teenage gopis can serve Srimati Radhika and Krishna, and they especially do so under the guidance of Sri Rupa Manjari. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakura is Kamala Manjari, one of the manifestations of Srimati Radhika, that is Gadadhar Pandit. And Kamala Manjari is one of the Pran Sakis. So there are 5 kinds of Sakis, which is also mentioned in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, and 2 of those Sakis are Manjaris. One is Nitya Manjari and one is Pran Manjari, or Nitya Saki and Pran Saki. And the Pran Sakis, like Rupa and Rati and Labanga and Kamal Manjari, Bhaktivinoda Thakura is the Pran, one of the Pran Sakis, and that means the most near and dear to Srimati Radhika and the leader of the other Saki, of the other Manjaris. So Gurudev continues, Namo Bhakti Vinodaya Sacchidananda Namani. Sacchidananda is Krishna himself, or Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Sat means transcendentally existing, beautiful, Nandanandan Swarup, his threefold bending form. This is Sat. Chit is knowledge, but not just knowledge as we know it in this world, but it's condensed knowledge, which becomes emotion. Just like if you had some traumatic experience, for example, that's very strongly in our bodies. And so the memory of it is in the body and it's easy to remember as a pop-up. So this knowledge that Krishna is the embodiment of is knowledge with bhav, with emotion. What bhav? More than Mahabhav, Ruda, Adiruda. Radhika has Madan, Mohan, and more. And a part of that is in the maidservants. So even Lalita cannot go where Kamala Manjari can go. Such Sakis as Lalita will wait and ask this maidservant of Rupa Manjari, Kamala Manjari, can we go in now? Because Radha and Krishna are engaged in such a confidential pastime, like during the Shanta Lila. And so Kamala Manjari might reply, oh yes, you can come in now, or, oh, wait a little and then come. Kamala Manjari, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakura, is serving Radha and Krishna in these ways. Then he continues, Gaura Shakti, or Shakti Swarupaya, means Gadadhar Pandit, who is Radhika herself. How is she, Radhika, in the form of Gadadhar Pandit serving? It seems that she's not serving Mahaprabhu in that form, but she's always serving, looking after Mahaprabhu to see, I have donated my mood to him. Is he actually playing my role properly or not? And if he's not, then Radhika in the form of Gadadhar Pandit will twist Mahaprabhu's ear. Not literally, but she'll show him how to do it better. So Gadadhar Pandit is still full Radhika. All of her moods are present in him. Krishna is only imitating, playing the role of Radhika, but Gadadhar Pandit really is Radhika. And Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakura is the Prakash Vigraha, or manifestation of Gadadhar Pandit. So then, page 87 is a quote from our Param Gurudev, Srila Bhakti Pradhan Kesava Goswami Maharaj. Later, he accepted the life of an ascetic. This is from the introduction. The introduction to Jaiva Dharma is actually written by our Param Gurudev. And there he writes, later he accepted the life of an ascetic and stayed at Swananda Sukata Kunj, which was nearby. While residing there, he established the appearance place of Chaitanya Dev and many other places of Gaura Lila. In this, he followed the example of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his followers, the 6 Goswamis, who had discovered the birthplace and other pastime places of Krishna. If Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakura had not appeared in this world, the pastime places and instructions of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would have disappeared from this world. So now there's a really fabulous glorification of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakura by Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada, showing the absurdity and cutting off your own thighs of those who have any doubt in the authenticity of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur's works. He writes, as soon as the sympathetic reader is in a position to appreciate the sterling quality of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur's philosophy, as soon as he's appreciating the entire vista of the revealed literatures of the world is automatically opens out to his reclaimed vision. Because everything depends on surrender to Guru and to the Guru Varga. And then by their mercy, things are known, not just if I know a million verses. Or if I could even speak brilliantly. I may not understand what I'm saying even in a real way, although I can understand in an intellectual way. What are the scriptures? They're nothing but the record of pure devotees and the divine message appearing on the lips of the pure devotees. The message conveyed by the devotees is the same. Now Srila Prabhupada Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur is saying exactly the same thing as our Srila Prabhupada, which I mentioned at the beginning, that even the message millions of years ago is the same as it is today, if the acharyas are bona fide. The words of devotees are ever identical with the scriptures. Any meaning of the scripture that belittles the function of the devotee, who is the original communicant of the divine message, contradicts his own claim to be heard. Isn't that interesting? If I want to be heard and I'm saying there's a flaw in Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakura, that means I'm contradicting my own claim to be heard. Does that make sense? Huh?
No, I don't understand that.
Not for you? Okay. So, on one hand, I know he's just like such a scholar, Srila Prabhupada, that he has to pick the most complicated word to explain something. So, in the first paragraph, he's saying that if one appreciates the qualities of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakura, automatically he can understand scripture. On the other hand, if he takes a meaning of the scriptures, like, say, Jiva Goswami's scriptures, Satsandarbha, if he takes a meaning of that scripture and uses his misinterpretation of Jiva Goswami to belittle the function of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakura, saying Bhaktivinoda Thakura contradicts Jiva Goswami, Because Jiva Goswami doesn't talk about the praying being inherent in the soul or being dormant in the soul. But he really does. And only Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakura made that clear. So if anyone uses the meaning of Jiva Goswami's scriptures to belittle the function of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakura, he loses his own claim to be heard. He's not worth hearing.
Yeah, it's not.
So typically, yeah.
Sorry, you said about where I wrote it down, the understanding in a real and intellectual way, because what's the difference between real understanding and intellectual understanding?
Well, the first time I met Srila Gurudev, I said to him, I preach around the world for Srila Prabhupada. I quote his books, and letters, and so many things. I can give so many examples from scripture, but I have no experience of what I'm saying. I have intellectual. In other words, I can say something, but I have no realization of it. I'll give an example in a minute. So I thought that it was going to say intellectual understanding is not full understanding. But what did he say? He said intellectual understanding is no understanding. Mm-hmm. Here's an analogy. Have you all had a jackfruit?
Yeah.
Imagine that you never had a jackfruit or saw a jackfruit, which during Prabhupada's time, I have never seen or tasted a jackfruit. So Prabhupada gave the example that if I try to explain what a jackfruit is, how am I going to explain it to you who has never seen it or tasted it? Okay, so the skin looks a little bit and feels a little bit like a snake. It's kind of rough. And the inside is all gooey, kind of like a honey and mashed potato. And the shape is kind of like a punched in football. What will you get out of a jackfruit? Well, Gurudev gave the example. Now, I know you've all had rasagullas, but just imagine you've never had a rasagula. And I say to you, because I have seen and tasted a rasagula, it's about the size of a ping pong ball, and it's white like a ping pong ball, but it's very spongy, and it explodes in your mouth. It tastes like a combination of honey and apple, and drips down the side of your mouth. What do you get about a rasagula? Nothing. But you could still explain a rasagula to somebody else, because you heard it from me. So you have intellectual understanding, but not real understanding. Okay, so I'll continue reading Srila Prabhupada's glorification of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakura. To the conditioned soul, if he is disposed to listen in a truly submissive spirit, then the language of the pure devotee can alone impart the knowledge of the Absolute. And this means realized knowledge. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakura is acknowledged by all of his sincere followers as possessing the above powers of the pure devotee of Godhead. So his words have to be received from the lips of the pure devotee. In other words, someone who is surrendered to him. Only he can understand and has the mercy of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakura. Before we open any of the books penned by Bhaktivinoda Thakura, we would do well to reflect a little on the attitude with which, as the indispensable prerequisite to approach its study. So what is the prerequisite, Srila Gurudev, to approach a study of his book, any of his books? There's so many wonderful books, aren't there, that we have, like Bhajana Rahasya, for example. That's so wonderful. So the prerequisite, like Srila Gurudev explains so many times, you take the book, put it on your head, put it on your heart, And you say, oh Prabhu, you're not a book. You are Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakura yourself. You're Jiva Dharma yourself. You're Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and all your associates yourself. You're Radha Krishna and all your associates yourself. And you're the Babajis, the pure devotee Babajis yourselves. All of you, as I'm sitting here at your lotus feet, please be merciful unto me. Shower me with your causeless mercies so that I can realize what you're telling me and take away all my doubts and the reality of what I'm hearing. And Gurudev would say that if you do read like this, then all Siddhanta will come in your heart. And if you don't, you just pick up a book to read, thinking that you're going to understand it by looking at the words, that you'll be full of doubts and touch with Siddhanta. So, before we open any of the books penned by Thakur Bhaktivinoda, we would do well to reflect a little on the attitude with which, as the indispensable prerequisite to approach the study. It is by neglecting to remember the fundamental principle that the empiric Vedantists find themselves so hopelessly puzzled in their vain attempt to reconcile the statements of the different tenets of the scriptures. In other words, if we don't pray like that and be submissive like that and surrender like that, then we'll just get caught up in there's so many contradictions in the scriptures. So I don't even know how to relate to them. Why are there apparent differences in the contradictions in the scriptures? There aren't, but it's our lack of understanding that finds that. Or you may find something like, for example, Srila Prabhupada once said, 15 million years ago we were in Vaikuntha, but then we fell. And then we know from him so many quotes, especially from third canto, that no one can ever fall from Vaikuntha because it's the eternal abode. It's impossible. Because you already have your spiritual body and Svarupa Shakti, which the spiritual body is permeated with, can never be covered by Maya. So why are these two apparently contradictory statements are there? Then we will go to according to time, place, and circumstances. For new people, the Acharya will say things like that. Even because we were editing Srila Gurudev's Morning Walks book, which included darshans, he was speaking to some devotee's grandmother who was totally a non-devotee. And he said the same thing, because it makes you feel more at home. Okay. So then Srila Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada is coming to the end. The person to whom the Acharya is pleased to transmit his power is alone in a position to convey the divine message. Same thing. Only one who's got the mercy of the previous Acharya is qualified to really give the message. And thus we have our uninterrupted, unbroken chain of disciplic succession from Brahma, from Krishna to Brahma, and all the way down. And in more recent times, we have the uninterrupted flow as the Bhaktivinoda Thara, or the free flow current of the moods and teachings of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakura, which we want to be in. Okay, so we were going to begin this discussion by taking off where left off last time, which was, it seems like Jiva Gosvami is saying something different from Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakura when he's talking about there's a body waiting in Vaikuntha, and when the Jiva who's doing sadhana becomes perfect, then he joins with that body and then can serve. And we were going to talk about Gurudev's lecture, which he gave in Hindi, and was kindly translated by a few nice devotees, how they're saying exactly the same thing, but in different words. and how only by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakura could we understand what Jiva Goswami meant. But now the time is up. So how about if we begin from there next week? Well, it's already been, actually it's only been an hour because it took us a while to get online here. Maybe I'll say a little bit of it.
Yeah.
I'll give you a bit. There's no point in too quick. You already remember, Jiva Goswami's verse says, in Vaikuntha, there are unlimited spiritual forms, which are all Jyotir Amsabhuti, which means forms that have emanated from the effulgence of the form of the Supreme Lord. When a devotee becomes liberated, then the Lord makes that soul one with one of those unlimited forms. Now, just to make a comment here, we are, as described by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakura and all of our acharyas, we are atoms in the pencil rays. We're particles of the pencil rays of the effulgence of the Lord. So it's not new that we're hearing that the spiritual body is, emanated from the effulgence of the form of the Lord. It doesn't mean that it's impersonal or anything. Another thing, which is not what Srila Gurudev is saying here, but just something to think about. In eternal time, we already have a spiritual body, but it's not realized. And in this world, in our present state, it's dormant. So when Jiva Goswami says that there is a spiritual body, but it's near Jiva, it's inactive or dormant, it's unconscious, a chaitana, that could very easily apply to the fact that we have a spiritual body with all of our hairstyles and dress and everything in eternal time. And that same form is in potency now in the Jiva's heart, in seed. Right, now you can think about that for a minute. In other words, again, acharyas say the same thing in different words. They all give different interesting poetic analogies to say the same thing. In eternal time, in our constitutional perfected form, we have a full-featured spiritual body, not in linear time. In linear time, which is where we are now, and where we were before we first took these bodies, we have that form in a seed. Krishna created us with a seed or potency for a particular relationship and a particular hairstyle and dress. Does that make sense? So that's all I'm saying here. So here, Jiva Goswami is saying, in the spiritual world of Vaikuntha, there's a body, but it's not functioning right now. Means we're not aware of it. So the acharyas speak in so many different ways, like we forgot our divine rus with Krishna. We forgot our relationship, but we never had the relationship. So all language is going to be insufficient and defective. Even Jiva Goswami's words, even Krishna's words in the Bhagavad Gita, everything's going to be defective when it comes through material language to conditioned souls. So Gurudev is saying, you understand what it seems like Jiva Goswami is saying? I'll say it in Gurudev's words. We hear that Jiva Goswami has written in Kriti Sandarbha Anuched 10. Anuched is like a chapter. In relation to Sarlok and Mukti, there are unlimited spiritual bodies of associates in the Vaikuntha planets that have manifested from the effulgence of Bhagavan. These spiritual bodies are waiting to be occupied like a coat on a hanger. Like living entities who have become perfect by sadhana bhajan. In other words, it seems to be saying we don't have a body in seed even. When in Jiva, Gurudev is continuing to explain what it appears that Jiva Goswami is saying. When a jiva attains perfection, the Lord gives him one of these bodies. He mixes a particular associate's body with the jiva and gives the body to him. These associates' bodies are illuminated by the Lord's energy, yet they are near jiva, inactive right now, while waiting for the jiva to attain perfection. They're dormant. Life is there, but they remain as if unconscious. So do you see, if you can, extend your imagination, how that fits with the philosophy that's been talked about in the last 4 weeks? Or not?
So is that eternal time, or is that
eternal time? The spiritual body is already there. It's already fully conscious. It's already engaged in service. This is just a poetic analogy. It can't be taken literally. It's just a poetic analogy, like it's called, I'll remember it in a minute. But it's like when Prabhupada says the body is just like a clay coating over the spiritual body. Does that mean the spiritual body looks like the material body? And if somebody's a man, he has a man's Svarupa. And if somebody's a lady, if somebody's a dog, he has a dog's Svarupa? No. It's just a, can't think of the word. It's like a placeholder until there's more realization. Or it's like Sakachandra Nyaya.
Yeah.
Which means first the mother has to say, you see there? The kid says, where's the moon? Look, over there, it's sitting on the branch. But it's not. Okay. So, if you see it as a placeholder and consider it saying the same thing as Bhaktivinoda Thakura and Gurudev and Prabhupada and everybody says, all of a sudden all the pieces will come in place about like the coat on the hanger and the parked car and all that. But Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakura is known as the seventh Goswami, no less than any Goswami, and who is also Kamala Manjari, has explained the Svarupa in an apparently different way. He said that the Nityaparikars, eternal associates, who have manifested from Baladev, some are performing devotional service in Vrindavan in their spiritual forms, some are serving in Dwarka, and some in Vaikuntha. They are all called associates, not jivas. The word jiva is not used. They are called associates regardless of whether they are sadhansita or nityasiddha. Some nityasiddha associates are expansions of Balaram and some are expansions of Radharani. So regarding the jiva who's come from Tatastha, the marginal line, the imaginary line, see there's really no line between the material and spiritual worlds. There's really no Tatastha region as a geographical region. It's just Chandrasaka Nyaya. Means the logic of the moon on the branch. Mommy, where's the moon? Look, can you see it's up on the branch? It's not. It's even further away than the sun, according to this canto. But you have to give a simpler analogy before later a more complicated analogy can be given. For example.
That was a stupid question. But there's so many things that in Shastra that you have to kind of reconcile and I think that the understanding of this is the moon on the branch kind of analogy. So therefore it's something for me to have an idea of, just to give me some kind of understanding. But it's not like that. So when do I apply that so that I don't let my intellect go and speculate and come with a fantasy or whatever? How is that applied?
You have to think like that until we come to the next level when we get more realization or we can understand something more technical.
Like everything that I hear or anything that I might not understand?
Again?
Do I think like that in regards to everything I hear?
Well, in one way, yes, because everything we hear, we think we understand, but because we're using our material contaminated intelligence, we're not really understanding. Like the example of the jackfruit and the gulab jamun. Or rasagula. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Intellectually. Radhika is just asking, when they say it's not a place, is it more like a state of consciousness? If I say yes, it still won't be clear. And it still won't be clear to me either. So there's one conversation between me and Gurudev in somewhere in this Svarupa the Jiva book, where I asked Gurudev about, what were we doing before we came to this world? He said we were in the body of Garbhodakshaya Vishnu. So I said, so are we? He said, but it's really not like that. We are eternal. We didn't come from the body of Garbhodakshaya Vishnu. So then I said, so we were eternally in the body of Garbhodakshaya Vishnu? And he said, no. And he said, you'll never understand now. Only by sadhana bhajan will you be able to understand. So among those who have come from Tatastha Shakti, some looked towards the Lord and some looked away. Do you think we really fell like the knife and bounced off one side of the knife or the other like mustard seeds? It's all Sakachandra Nyaya. So among those who come from the Tatastha Shakti, some looked towards the Lord and some looked away. Those who looked toward him went to Vaikuntha. Those who looked towards the material world became attracted here. However, even for those jivas who became attracted to the world, in their jiva svarupa hoy krishnara nitidas, their perfectional relationship with Krishna is already there, but in the form of a potency, as in a seed potency. By the mercy of Guru and performing sadhana bhaja, one enters the states of rati or bhav, at which time his siddhadeya is revealed. So then Gurudev says all the Goswamis have written in this way, as I am explaining, and as Bhaktivinoda Thakura explains, that in the Jiva Swarup, which is already in him as a potency, everything is chinmoy, transcendental and eternal. Even now it is eternal in the form of potency. The particular bhav of serving Krishna and the Jiva's perfected siddha form is available in that seed in the form of a potency. So now he's going to discuss, so how do we reconcile this with Jiva Goswami's statement? Because really it's a poetic analogy. It's not to be taken literally. So Gurudev explains. He seems to say that there's a body of an associate in the spiritual world. When the jiva attains perfection, both merge. Then he can do service, not before that. Whereas we know that in Bhava Bhakti, you're doing service in your internally conceived spiritual form, right? You know about that. Before that, the jiva can't do any kind of service. So how will we be able to reconcile this? In this, the question arises. In that world, the jiva swarup is being saved for him while he's still here doing sadhana. The swarup which is here and the swarup which is in the parikar, which is there, will be different. The Goswamis are saying that in the jiva swarup, everything is present. So how can we recognize Jiva Goswami's statement with what our other Goswamis are saying? And then there's a whole explanation to reconcile the whole thing. Can we leave it for next week? We're going to continue from this sentence next time. Vaishnava